Please, my husband. Please, my love. Forgive me. Please. Your brother flogged me 24 lashes. I beg you to stop.
And I'm going to give you 24 more lashes. Lie down.
Please, my husband. I am sorry.
Shut up, useless woman, foolish wife. I said, lie down. Chimamanda was only 19 when she was married off to Boniface. Her adopted family, who had treated her like an unwanted guest in their home, eagerly handed her over to Boniface, the struggling fabric seller. To them, she was a burden offloaded. To Chimamanda, it was a silver of hope, a chance to escape years of maltreatment. But she would soon learn that hope was a fleeting illusion. In the early years of her marriage to Boniface, Chimamanda had poured her soul into her husband's fabric business. She greeted every customer with a radiant smile, her warmth and respect creating an irresistible pull that kept customers coming back. Their business became successful, and Boniface's ego got bigger. He basked in his newfound wealth, but forgot that it was Chimamanda, his wife, that helped to make the business successful with her hard work and dedication. As Boniface's wealth grew, his humanity diminished. Chimamanda became a prisoner in his home. The abuse began slowly, cutting remarks, dismissive gestures, but soon escalated into a storm of physical and emotional violence. The woman who had been his lifeline was now his victim. One night, the sound of rain beating against the iron roof competed with Chimamanda's muffled sobs. Boniface had returned home, drunk and reeking of alcohol. His bloodshot eyes found fault in everything she did. The soup was too salty. The rice was undercooked. Without warning, he dragged her by the hair into the kitchen, stripping her of her dignity and clothes, and rubbed hot pepper paste on her body. Chimamanda screamed, her skin aflame, while their two children, Ekene, 7 years old, and Dora, who is just 5, cried as they watched their father maltreat their mother like she was a slave. Boniface, after beating his wife, usually locks her up in the dark kitchen store with iron barricades. Mama, Mama, Ekene cried, his small fist bruised from pounding the iron barricades that imprisoned his mother. Mommy, come out, Dora wailed, tears streaking down her chubby cheeks. But Boniface was deaf to their cries. He locked Chimamanda in the kitchen store, which he had turned into a prison for his own wife. The cold, damp space smelled of despair. Its only furnishing was a bucket she was forced to use when nature called. She slept on the bare floor. That night, as she lay on the floor, her body burning from the pepper that he usually sprays on her body, before locking her up, she prayed for strength. Her children needed her, but how could she save them when she couldn't save herself? The next morning, Chimamanda was released, only to be met with another blow. Boniface had been on the phone, his voice dripping with sweetness as he spoke to someone over the phone. Darling, you are the most beautiful woman in the world, he said over the phone. Chimamanda, unable to hold back, confronted him. Who are you talking to, Boniface? His response was a slap that sent her sprawling to the floor. Don't you ever question me, he thundered. When she continued protesting, he said, oh, you really want to know who I'm talking to on the phone? He then picked his phone and called Mona Lisa, his side chick, and invited her over. When Mona Lisa arrived, to Chimamanda's horror, Boniface tied her to the chair and made her watch as he lavished his mistress with attention, their laughter a cruel mockery of her pain. And to make it worse, Boniface kissed and romanced Mona Lisa while tying his wife up in a chair, making her watch the whole thing. She cried silently while thanking God her children had gone to school that morning and were not around to witness this horror. Boniface's wickedness towards his wife knew no bounds. Days turned into weeks, and Chimamanda's once vibrant spirit withered under the weight of his abuse. Her body was now a canvas of bruises and scars that bore the evidence of his rage. He refused to let her return to the shop, fearing the customers would notice her bad condition. The business began to fail. The sales girls Boniface had hired were rude and careless, driving away the loyal customers Chimamanda had worked so hard to cultivate. But Boniface was also sleeping with the sales girls, so he could not query them or correct them when they don't treat customers with respect. Over time, the low sales started affecting his income, and he was worried because he did not want to return back to being a struggling fabric seller. Until he married Chimamanda, he was struggling seriously. But when she came into his life, she grew the business with her natural business acumen. But now that he has banned her from the shop, he was slowly sliding into poverty, and he could not just bring her back to the shop because the bruises he gave her was too much, and her customers might encourage her to quit the marriage or worse, involve the police. One evening, after a hot, passionate session with his side chick, Mona Lisa, they sat on the bed when Mona Lisa pitched her sinister idea. "Boniface," she said, tracing a finger along his chest, "we could make real money, enough to start a fresh family. I know someone who buys human organs, and they pay millions of naira." Boniface froze and asked, "Organs? Are you mad, Mona Lisa?" "Think about it," Mona Lisa insisted, and she continued, "Chimamanda and those two brats you call children are holding you back. You have always said you hated them. Let's kidnap them and harvest their organs. We will make lots of money, and then we can get married and start our own family. Moreover, because you are the husband and the father to the children, no one would suspect you." Boniface hesitated. He looked at his hands, wrinkled from years of hard work, and thought about the family he had built. Could he really go through with such a heinous act? Mona Lisa leaned closer, her voice a whisper, dripping with deceit, and she said,
I am pregnant for you, Boniface. Don't you want a new family? A better life?
Her words hung in the air like a dark cloud, threatening to engulf him. For the first time in years, Boniface felt a bank of fear, not for himself, but for the monster he was becoming. Yet, even that fear couldn't drown out the greed and lust that had consumed him. Chimamanda lay in the dark special prison cell because Boniface, her husband, had beat her mercilessly and again poured hot pepper sauce on her body that morning, locked her up and left for the shop. Her body was aching and her heart breaking. She knew she had to find a way out, not just for herself, but for her children. The walls around her may have cried with her, but they couldn't save her. She would have to save herself. When Boniface came home that evening, he released his wife from the special prison and ordered her to cook his favorite meal. Chimamanda went into the kitchen to prepare his food, despite her weakened state. She moved with quiet efficiency, desperate to avoid his wrath. The children, Ekene and Dora, stood in the corner, their eyes dull with fear. They had learned to stay out of their father's way, especially when he is angry, and he is always angry. When Chimamanda placed the food in front of him, Boniface frowned. "Where is my water?" he barked. Chimamanda froze, realizing her mistake.
I am sorry. Let me...
Oh!
Boniface exploded her face with a hot slap. "You want me to choke on my food?" he shouted. "You want me to die of thirst? Fine, let me show you what it feels like to suffer." He pushed her to the floor and started kicking her in the stomach. Chimamanda groaned in pain, clutching her abdomen. But Boniface wasn't finished. He kicked her again and again, his anger building up with every kick. "Since you want me to die of thirst," he growled, his voice venomous, "I will kill you with hot water." He stormed into the kitchen, filled a kettle and placed it on the stove. Chimamanda's heart pounded as she tried to crawl away, but Boniface grabbed her by the hair and dragged her back. Ekene, only 7 years old, couldn't take it anymore. "Leave Mama alone," he shouted, rushing at his father and punching him in the leg with all his might. Boniface turned, momentarily stunned by the boy's courage, but his shock quickly turned into fury. He pushed Ekene to the floor, sending the boys sprawling. Dora, watching the chaos unfold, wailed loudly, her tiny body trembling with fear. The kettle whistled, and Boniface returned to the kitchen. He poured the boiling water into a cup, its steam rising ominously. Chimamanda begged through her tears.
Oh, please, Boniface, please.
He ignored her pleas. Grabbing her jaw, he forced her mouth open and tilted the cup towards her lips. Chimamanda screamed as the scalding hot water burned her lips and throat, the pain unbearable. The children screamed louder, their cries piercing through the night. Boniface, unmoved by his family cries, tied all of them up with rope and sealed their mouths with duct tapes so the neighbors wouldn't hear their persistent cries. He wiped his hands on his shirt and called Mona Lisa on the phone, and he said coldly, "It is done." Mona Lisa's voice was calm and calculated, and she said, "Good. The buyers are ready for the delivery. Do not kill them yet. We want their organs fresh. You will take them to a secret warehouse tonight. Here are the coordinates to locate the warehouse." She recited the location, and Boniface crippled it down. He glanced at his family, tied and huddled on the floor, their bodies battered and broken. 7-year-old Ekene screamed, his young mind racing for a way to escape, but Boniface tightened the ropes, ignoring his son's struggle. "Stay still, you little rat," Boniface hissed at his own son. Once it was late into the night and the neighbors have all gone to bed, Boniface carried them one by one to the trunk of his SUV. Chimamanda tried to fight, kicking weakly against him, but he overpowered her with ease. "You should have been grateful I even married you," he spat as he shoved her into the trunk of the car. "But now you and your stupid children will finally be useful to me." The drive to the warehouse was eerily silent, save for the muffled sobs from the trunk. The thick forest loomed as he followed the coordinates Mona Lisa had given him, the path becoming darker and more isolated with every mile. When he reached the warehouse, Boniface dragged his family inside and locked the doors. Mona Lisa called again, and she instructed, "Keep them alive until tomorrow. The buyers won't be able to come tonight." Boniface sighed, irritated. "Okay, fine, but this better be worth it," he backed. "It will be," Mona Lisa assured him, and she said, "Just think of our future together and our baby." Boniface hung up and went into the warehouse. He leaned against the wall, his mind racing. For the first time, doubts began to creep in. He looked at his wife and his own children, bound and helpless on the floor. A flicker of guilt passed through him, but he quickly buried it. He had made his choice. As he lay down on the floor, sleep slowly came. The cries of his children haunted him, but he silenced his conscience with thoughts of money and a new life with Mona Lisa, especially now that she is pregnant for him. The warehouse was dimly lit, with its walls damp and reeking of neglect. In the dead of the night, as little Dora slept beside her mother, Chimamanda and Ekene whispered to each other because they have been able to get rid of the tape over their mouths. "Mama," Ekene whispered, his voice trembling but resolute. "Something is wrong. Daddy is going to hurt us." Chimamanda's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. She could no longer shield her children from the truth. "I am praying," she managed to whisper back. "God will help us." But Ekene wasn't willing to leave it to prayer alone. His young mind spun with a plan. In fact, he had successfully untied the ropes on his hands, and he untied his sister's and mother's hands. And Ekene said to her, "Pretend you are dying, mommy. Choke, breathe heavy. Once he is distracted by you, I can escape and find help." Chimamanda looked at her son, shocked, and she told him, "Your father will kill us." "Not yet, mommy, because I heard someone on the phone say that they need us alive for now." Chimamanda hesitated for a moment before nodding. She began to fake shallow breath, gasping and wheezing as though life was leaving her body. She let out low, grottal sound, her body shaking in agony. The sound woke Boniface, who grumbled in annoyance and got up to check. "What is going on?" he barked. "Mommy is dying. She's choking," Ekene cried, tears streaming down his face. "Help, Daddy, help!" Ekene screamed. He was such a good actor. Boniface's sleepy head was filled with questions, especially as to how they loosened the ropes. But he was instructed to keep them alive, so he rushed towards his wife to try and save her. Chimamanda mustered every ounce of strength she had left and attacked him, clawing and punching. Her years of pain and humiliation boiled to the surface as she fought like a lioness, protecting her curbs. Ekene seized the chance and bolted, his tiny legs propelling him through the warehouse doors and into the unknown forest. He ran out to call for help. Inside the warehouse, Chimamanda and Boniface fought viciously. He was stronger, but Chimamanda's rage was her fuel. She clawed at his face, kicked at his chins, and dodged his punches. When he managed to shove her to the ground, her eyes darted to a stone nearby. With a burst of energy, she grabbed it and swung it with all her might. The loud smashing sound echoed through the warehouse as Boniface collapsed and lost consciousness, blood trickling down his forehead. Breathing heavily, Chimamanda grabbed his phone and dialed the police. The operator's voice was calm, reassuring her that help was on the way, that she could simply keep the phone location on. She clutched Dora tightly, whispering prayers of gratitude, and after some minutes gone by, the sound of sirens filled the air. Chimamanda and her daughter were saved by the police, and Boniface was arrested. After the rescue of Chimamanda and her daughter, Dora, days turned into weeks, and Ekene was nowhere to be found, since he ran out of the warehouse to look for help. Chimamanda's heart broke a little more each day as search parties searched the forest without success. Boniface and Mona Lisa were in the police station. During her interrogation, Mona Lisa confessed everything, including the details of the organ harvesting plan, and revealed the location of the kidnappers' syndicate in exchange for a reduced prison sentence. However, Boniface was not so lucky. He faced a long prison sentence for his crimes, and his misery deepened when he learned that Mona Lisa had never been pregnant. She had fabricated this story. She lied that she was pregnant in order to manipulate him into carrying out her wicked plan. Alone in his cell, Boniface was consumed by shame and regret, realizing too late the depths of his foolishness and self-destruction. 3 months later, the police eventually informed Chimamanda that the forest was infamous for kidnappings and that Ekene might have fallen victim to one of the gangs that roamed that area. "No!" Chimamanda cried, collapsing on the floor as her neighbors gathered to console her.
He is my son. He is brave. He saved us. God, please bring him back to me.
Chimamanda cried sorrowfully. Little Dora clung to her mother, her innocent voice piercing through the sorrow. "Mommy, don't cry. Ekene is coming back today. I saw it in my dream." Chimamanda wept harder, unable to believe her daughter. The police has now officially stopped searching for Ekene after 3 months. There was no hope left. But that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a shadow appeared at the gates. "Mommy! Mommy!" Chimamanda turned, her heart leaping to her throat. There he was, Ekene.
Ekene, my son. Ekene.
She screamed, running to him and pulling him into her arms. She held him so tightly, afraid to let go. As tears streamed down her face, neighbors gathered, shouting in joy and disbelief. Later inside the house, Ekene told his mother and sister all that happened. "After I ran out of the warehouse, I got lost in the forest and I found an old couple right there in the forest. They saved me. I was so hungry and they gave me food and water. But they wouldn't let me leave at first. They were scared. I begged and finally they showed me the way out of the forest. I went to the police station nearby and they brought me here." Chimamanda kissed his face over and over, unable to contain her gratitude, and she embraced her daughter for having strong faith that her brother would return. Weeks later, Chimamanda and her children stood in front of the packed church. News of her story and survival had spread, and people had gathered to celebrate her and to hear her tell her story in a special church service. She held the microphone, her voice trembling with emotion as she began. For 10 years, I lived in silence. I endured pain, humiliation, and violence because I thought I had no choice. I believed I had to stay for the sake of my children, but I was wrong. Silence almost killed me and my children. The congregation was silent, many wiping away tears as she continued. My so-called husband was my greatest enemy. The man who was supposed to protect me and my children turned our home into a prison as my children watched me suffer. But God gave me strength. He gave me Ekene and Dora, whose courage saved us. She paused, her voice breaking, and she said,
Domestic violence is not love. If you are in an abusive relationship, speak up, reach out. Don't wait until it's too late. No one deserves to live in fear. We deserve to live, to thrive, and to be loved.
The church erupted in applause as Chimamanda hugged Ekene and Dora. Tears of gratitude and relief streamed down her face. She had survived, her children had survived, and now she was free. As Chimamanda and her children walked out of the church that day, the sun shone brighter and the air felt fresher. She had filed for divorce, cutting all ties with Boniface, who now languished in prison with Mona Lisa. Though scars remained, both visible and invisible, Chimamanda knew she was stronger than ever. She held her children's hands tightly, her heart filled with hope for the future. Together, they would rebuild their lives, free from fear and full of love.